We're wondering whether European leaders will have to go all the way to save the euro. What does going all the way mean? We're going to talk about it right now with our guests, who include from Brussels, Yorgo Chatzimarkakis of the Free Democrats, member of the European Parliament. Also with us here in the studio, Raquel Garrido of the French Party of the Left, le Parti de Gauche, Ali Fatemi, who teaches economics at the American Graduate School of Economics, and Bruno Jambard, Director of Polling for Polling Institute Opinion Way. Just before the break, in the first part, Yorgo Chatzimarkakis was saying how he'd like to see a solution that's fleshed out at the European level, not at the level of just simply the French and German leaders. Two gentlemen who agree with you, Yorgo, are both the incoming and the outgoing governors of the European Central Bank. They say it's time to pool resources.
To cope with this, we have to have a treaty change. And here, when I say this, I'm not thinking about the euro bond or other financial constructions. I'm talking about rules for fiscal discipline, rules for growth.
We could imagine having a federal government with a Minister of Finance for the Confederation. There's nothing new in what I'm saying now. I've said this in the past. But he could have a number of responsibilities, among them assuring the regulation of the entire governance within the Eurozone.
Yorgo Chatzimarkakis, how close are we to having sort of a super Euro finance minister?
It's quite interesting that the parties think that the Germans are against a stronger coordination. Definitely they are against Eurobonds. But there's a recent Gallup, a recent poll from last week that says that the vast majority of Germans wants a step more in European integration, wants a step into the direction of a European federal state. And there recently has begun a debate of the United States of Europe, or the federal states of Europe in Germany, which is very positive. I think people understand that we can't allow for the moral hazard of just having public debt all over Europe and let the richer countries pay for the poorer countries. But they understand that we only overcome the crisis by accepting more Europe. And that's why we have to now look at the European institutions and make them stronger. That means that we need a stronger Commission. I ask the Commission, I ask the President Barroso to show up, to come up with clear proposals. Up to now, we only have seen the heads of state. And I mentioned Sarkozy and Merkel being present. This is not the right way. We need a strong Commission with a strong control by the European Parliament. We are here. We are a strong Parliament in the meanwhile. We could do this job, but as it seems, the heads of state like Merkel and Sarkozy, they want to keep us out of the control. This would be definitely the wrong approach, and we really plea for the European approach.
Raquel Garrido, a stronger Europe with a stronger European Parliament?
I'm amazed at how much this is all a pretense to push an ultra-liberal agenda. When you listen to Trichet and his Italian colleague, I mean, if they wanted to change the treaties, they could, for instance, suggest that we change Article 123, of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which is precisely the article that prohibits the central bank to buy debt from Greece. That would be a very sensitive solution. Instead, they're saying more restrictions, less deficit, more equilibrium. So it's just a pretense. They're actually achieving locally in each country the constitutionalization of these sort of ultra-liberal rules. So they're just using this to just take more money out of the peoples of Europe. And where we're going with this, I mean, is no one knows in the history of Europe, and it is very dangerous, very dangerous.
Bruno Jambard, we heard there Yorgo Chatzimarkakis talk about how we need a stronger Central Europe with a stronger European Parliament. It's a hard sell, though, for politicians. They get the feeling that Brussels isn't very democratic, and they don't want more centralization for a lot of them.
Well, I think it's difficult because there is Brussels is a lot of times used by the French, especially in France, by the politicians to say that the problems are coming from Brussels and the solutions are coming from Paris. And so when you want to change that speech and want to convince the people that you should need more European integration, for example, it's difficult to say that when during the same time you are always saying that you have to defend French interest in Brussels. So I think that I'm not sure that in the French public opinion this crisis will reinforce the attachment to Brussels and to the European institutions in France.
There's plans afoot. We're going to talk about, Der Spiegel is talking about a divide and rescue plan, where instead of pulling away from the countries in the southern Mediterranean that are in trouble, like Greece, the idea would be for the countries of the Eurozone to pull away from the likes of Britain and to make more decisions inside the Eurozone. Your thoughts on that, Ali Fatemi?
Well, I just heard this afternoon, David, the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, and he was being pressed by his own party, why don't you have a referendum about what the Europeans are going to do? And he said, look, we are not part of the Eurozone, but we have a referendum. Whatever they want to do, we should help them, because if Euro goes down, or if Europe has serious economic problem, we have problem because 40% of our exports go to Europe. But let me make a couple of comments here. You see, the reason they go to Mrs. Merkel and to Sarkozy is because they're the ones who control the money. They're the ones who have constitutionally the money. European Parliament doesn't have that control. And the problem is that many economists said from the beginning, this is going to fail. You have never had a monetary union without a fiscal union. It's just like somebody having the money and somebody else is spending it. You can't do that. In France, in the United States, in any country, the two go together. Now it's too late for that, because changing the treaty is one of the most difficult things. I hope people remember what happened to Lisbon Treaty. Treaty of Rome took 50 years to get where we are. We have to come up with easy, quick solutions now to get us out of this. Europe had 10 years, 10 golden years of prosperity. They should have taken care of these structural problems at that time. Now there is no time to do these things. I think Eurozone is the only solution, and I bet with you eventually they will accept it.
And the International Herald Tribune quotes unnamed sources in Berlin and Brussels as saying there are indeed plans afoot to reform Europe. Recently, when an official from a European Central Bank met with a financial official in Washington, the article writes, his host brandished the Articles of Confederation, for those of you who don't know it, the 1781 precursor to the United States Constitution. At the time, there was no fiscal union, to use as an example of why stronger unions become necessary. Yorgo Chatime-Marquez, are there any secret meetings taking place with characters that look like Ben Franklin in Brussels these days?
There are a lot of meetings, and some of them are secret, but most of them are public. And a lot of these things that have led us into the crisis could have been seen from the early beginning. I think we should end the secret meetings, and we should really, really focus on overcoming the crisis. I absolutely agree. There's no time. We need changes to the treaties, and I accept what has been said, that we need to detach from the Anglo-Saxon approach. I think it's right to take more decisions in the Eurozone, and the Maastricht Treaty and the Lisbon Treaty allow for a group of countries like the Eurozone members to go on, to have a further integration based on new treaties, as long as they don't go against the others. And this is what we should do now. We should form such an alliance of progress of the Eurozone and really have a sort of a finance minister, a federal finance minister for the Eurozone, and try to have this governance, the economic governance, as soon as possible. That was proposed on a very weak basis by Merkel Sarkozy. We now have to come up in the European institutions with a strong package. We talk about a so-called six-pack here, consisting of 6 elements. here in the European institutions, but we have to implement that soon. We expect President of the Commission Sarkozy to address the European Parliament next week in Strasbourg. It's not foreseen yet, but we urge him to come to the Parliament and to take a clear stance on that. Tomorrow here there will be a public meeting on Greece. It's called Reset Greece, where we really discuss investment programs for this country. So there is something going on. The more secrecy, the less better for overcoming the crisis.
And among those calling for a more federal Europe is Angela Merkel's predecessor as German Chancellor, Gerhard Schroeder, in an interview with Der Spiegel, saying the Commission will have to be turned into a government that is controlled in parliamentary terms by the European Parliament. That translates into a United States of Europe. Bruno Jambard, how will that idea go down?
Well, the problem is that if you do that kind of reforms, you also have to do political reforms to help something like a European democracy to emerge, and maybe to ask people to vote at a European level. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be, I think, difficult to accept for the people in the different national countries. And I'm not sure that so many countries are really ready to do that and to go to this so important European integration in the next years.
It is a general interest of Europeans that, yes, we start talking about harmonization of social rights, harmonization of taxing policies. Today, what you still have is that the treaties oblige for each country, each nation to compete tax-wise. There is absolutely, when you talk about a fiscal zone, well, today it's prohibited to harmonize fiscality. So yes, that's obviously the way forth if we want to reach some sort of, not optimal, but at least better monetary zone. But you will notice that none of these meetings are held actually talk about this. The only issues is more ultraliberalism, more competition, more contraction, and no one in these meetings ever asks themselves whether it would be by principle useful or correct to ask the people's, what their opinion is. And clearly the general interest of the Europeans here is defended by no one. And it's not only about the Germans on one hand, the French and the Italians, it's the people, the working class general interest is defended by no one in Brussels.
Let me put that to Yorgo Chatzimarkakis, get him a chance to respond. You heard Ali Fatemi say that the Lisbon Treaty was a really heavy lift, that we saw the Irish have to vote twice in a referendum because the first time they said no. If you're moving towards something as ambitious as a stronger finance minister for Europe, a United States of Europe even, how are you going to sell it to voters?
Well, most of the voters understand that it doesn't work, like it was raised in the discussion previously. It doesn't work to have a common monetary policy, but not a common fiscal policy. It's logical, it's obvious. It was a construction deficit of the Eurozone. Now, I think those voters who don't want to stay in the Eurozone should then be clear and say, okay, we leave the Eurozone. I think the time has come to ask the people whether they want or do not want a stronger cooperation. That would mean that in the Irish example, the Irish could say no, because the treaty does not foresee that you can push out a member of the Eurozone out of this zone or out of the currency union. But if a country decides on a voluntarily basis to leave, then it can leave. And so this vote of the Irish would then lead to leaving the Eurozone. I accept that. I wouldn't accept the discussion that is going on now to push out members, because this would cause a domino effect. But if you have once forever a clear decision, whoever wants to have closer cooperation should stay in, and who doesn't want to can leave, that would be a good move.
Ali Fatemi, I know that economists are good at analyzing the past and poor at predicting the future, but with the current crisis, they say necessity is the mother of invention. Where is it going to go? How far will they go in reforming Europe?
Well, most probably, it's just like a person who just had a heart attack. What he needs is a respiratory. You can't tell him go out and exercise and watch your diet and so on. Those long-term things, if they were done, he wouldn't be in the present crisis. So the function of a doctor is to save him from dying. And right now, I think there will be some stopgap policy decisions. Politicians
Can the Eurozone stay afloat with stopgap measures?
It has to. There's no alternative. There is no provision for leaving the euro. Euro was a mistake to begin with, and it's going to be a much greater mistake to break it up.
Well, isn't it also a mistake to use as a doctor the guy that actually tried to shoot you?
The guy too?
To use as a doctor the guy that actually shot you in the first place.
No, I don't share your view. No, I really don't think anybody had ill feelings. The greatest achievements of this century is the European Union. The fact that we have a common market. Look at the prosperity that it has brought. Look at the ease. Look at Europe has become a power in the world because of the European Union. That was not a mistake.
I'm afraid that language really doesn't affect day-to-day Europeans because their life, because they're seeing that that's not true. It might have turned out as something good for some, but for the great masses today, clearly Europe has not prevented the crisis, has not prevented it from coming to the United States. Europe, all this shield protection that should have existed because we had the euro did not exist. So, yes, let's not use as a doctor those people that did not protect us.
Just a final point, because we're almost out of time. Bruno Jean Bart, you heard what the rest of the panel said about perhaps this two-speed Europe now where the countries that are inside the Eurozone sort of band together. Is that something that's popular?
Well, I think what is the French are still very in the traditional vision of Europe. When you listen to what they say, they are very thinking that Europe was functioning much more in a good way when it was only a few countries, very close geographically, and also on level, on economic level. And it's clear that what could be a small number of countries who could lead to a new integration could be heard by some people. But I think people are really divided now on this issue, and I'm not sure it's going to be a very easy way to really make a consensus on these issues in the next years.
All right, unfortunately, we won't get a consensus today. I want to thank you very much, Bruno Jean Bart, Raquel Garrido. I want to thank Ali Fatemi, and I want to thank Yorgo Chatima Marquez for joining us here from Brussels for the France 24 debate. Finally, just a little programming note for you in the build-up to our 10th anniversary 9/11 coverage. Join us for a big first for this show. Wednesday, a Google Plus Hangout. Tell us how the world has changed, how your world has changed because of events on September 11th, 2001. That's Wednesday at 12 noon Central European Time. That's 11 a.m. if you're in London. To take part, it's easy. Follow France 24 producer Eric Olander at gplus.to/Olander. Well, that's it for the debate. Stay with us. Business is next with Marcus Carlson.